6 o'clock on Tuesday, August 16, and I'd like to convene the Grand Traverse County Parks and Recreation Commission regular meeting, rescheduled, was scheduled for Thursday, the August regular meeting. Could you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First, I'd like to extend our best wishes to the president of this commission, Al Larson, who's undergone some surgery. Al, we wish you the best of recoveries and hope that you're back with us soon. And it is also with regrets that I want to say so long and thanks to Russ Clark, who has announced that he has taken a job as community planner near Bowling Green, Kentucky for the National Park Service. He's going to be in charge, I understand, of the Trails, Rivers, and Resource Assistance Program down there. And we wish you the best, Russ. Russ has been an integral part of this organization for 10 years. He's been on the board for 10 years. 5 or 6 of those years, he can't remember how long, he was the chairman of the Parks and Recreation Commission. And in addition to all that, he led this group through the Civic Center Master Plan, which we'll hear more of today, but also the Twin Lake Master Plan and the Maple Bay Master Plan, and the Twin Bays, or the Twin Bays Master Plan? Or the T-Bays, I'm sorry, the T-Bays Master Plan. And that master plan, as well as with the work that he's done, Russ is a professional planner, that's his business. But he's donated to Grand Traverse County and the Parks and Recreation Commission the services of himself and his office for both the T-Bays Master Plan and the Civic Center Master Plan. And I can't imagine how much that we would have had to pay had that not been donated. So Russ, we want to thank you very much. It's our loss, Kentucky's gain, but also it's the loss of the Garfield Parks and Recreation Board because Russ simultaneously serves on that board. So it'll be big shoes to replace, so we'd encourage the county, the Board of Commissioners, to keep in mind Russ's special expertise in planning when they decide to try to fill his shoes. Okay, could I have a roll call, please?
Bob Karstens.
Here.
Russell Clark.
Here.
Peter Doran.
Here.
Bill Dorier.
Here.
Harry Leipzig. Rebecca Cass.
Here.
Chris Maxbauer.
Here.
Kevin McEllier.
Here.
And Dave Taylor.
Okay, we do have a quorum. We'll have our first public comment. Elaine Kozlowski's in the audience, but she's going to wait for the second public comment, so we can bypass that. I'll also bypass additions to the agenda. Having reviewed the bylaws, we find that we cannot amend the agenda of a rescheduled regular meeting, interestingly enough. Okay. Any special orders of business or presentations? None? The consent calendar, I'll read the basic elements of the consent calendar, then see if anybody wants anything removed from the consent calendar. We've got the Finance Budget Committee report, the 2011 budget report, the performance measures, communications from Rosalind Nadeau and Joan Send, both urging that the pool remain open because of their use of it as advocates and organizations for MS patients, and also the Parks Commission meeting per diem. There's also the minutes of the July 21st Commission meeting. Would anybody like anything removed from that? Christine?
The Parks and Rec Commission meetings, minutes, I'll get it out, of July 21st, please.
So done. Anything else? Can I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as amended?
So moved.
Moved by Karstens, supported by McEllier. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Okay, Parks and Recreation Commission minutes of July 21, 2011. Christine?
The reason I removed this is under additions to the agenda on page 14 of your packet, it says, Doyer stated he does not agree that this correction is accurate. He did not state that. I've watched the video 4 times, and that I think that sentence needs to be scratched.
Discussion?
I I thought he did.
I thought I did.
I thought I heard him definitely say that.
I think I said something similar to that. Maybe, are we just nitpicking here? or-
No. But you're welcome to disagree with me.
All right. Can I I would like a motion to approve the minutes as written,
So
and
moved.
then we will entertain a motion to amend the minutes with Christine's correction. Moved by Dwyer to approve the minutes. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Clark. Is there a motion to amend the minutes?
Motion to correct the minutes.
Motion to correct the minutes by McKellier, and that is
I'll support.
supported by Max Bauer, and that's to do what, Kevin? To take out the whole sentence?
Yeah, relative to the video, right, that statement was not in at that portion, correct.
It may have been stated later, it certainly was not at that time.
Excuse me. Okay,
Bob?
is it time to discuss?
Yes.
Okay.
Discussing the amendment.
I thought he made that remark with regard to the budget or to something to do with the finance committee. And are you saying that what page is that, his
It's on
remark?
page 14.
Thank you.
Okay, at that meeting, there was a motion to amend the agenda to add the corrected minutes of the Finance Committee meeting of June 1. And the minutes say, Dwyer stated he does not agree that this correction is accurate.
He didn't say it.
I think he said it, and I think he said it at that time.
Are we going to vote on this
Amendment.
amendment?
Right, as soon as discussion is complete. Do you have any
Mr. Chair,
discussion?
I'll just offer a comment that I believe that there is discussions on both sides in the beginning when we were pulling items from the consent calendar, but at this portion, this is incorrectly stated.
Okay. Any other discussion? Ready to vote on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no?
No.
That is defeated. There's a motion on the floor to approve the minutes of the July 21st meeting. Any further discussion? Ready to vote? Could I get a motion? Well, we do have the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Okay, we are on to the director's report. Jason?
All right, well, it's been an interesting month in talking about the first item on my report, the budget. And you've got quite a narrative in my report regarding the budget and the process we've gone through thus far. And I think Commissioner Max Bauer has added some items to your table for you to review regarding the prioritization by the County Board of Commissioners, as well as some comments from the public related to the public survey that was posted online during the budgeting process.
This is from the county commission,
Yes,
and this is what?
these are comments associated with a budget survey that was put out to the public by the County Board of Commissioners. Those are comments related to it.
And they prepared by you?
No,
No.
these are prepared by Commissioner Max Bauer.
Okay, by
All
Christine?
all of this stuff is from Max Bauer, not from you?
Nope, these comments
Okay.
were comments that, you want to explain what these are?
I certainly can.
Sure.
The county board put out a public opinion survey, and we received the results at our last RM&A committee meeting, the full committee of the county board.
Okay.
And this is the entire survey with the comments. What I did, all I did, was I took the comments out of the public opinion survey that pertained to Parks and Rec. Good, bad, or indifferent, they're in there.
All right.
And I thought that the Parks Commission would want to see the comments that were being made by the public about Parks and Rec. The color chart that you have was done by 8 of the 9 county commissioners, in which they ranked their priorities for the budget for 2012. And I just thought that you would want to see that as well.
So this is just additional information provided by Commissioner Max Bauer. To go back to my budget, I guess where we're at for
Yeah.
Parks and Recreation's budget, just to let the commission know, in 2011, our expenditures were our budgeted expenditures were $770,898. In preparation for this budget and understanding that the general fund allocation was more than likely going to be cut for 2012, the budget that I've presented so far was $736,347, a $34,000 reduction. I got word today from Dennis Aloya that the budget that will be presented to the County Board of Commissioners tomorrow, or the budget books that will be presented to them tomorrow, Dennis is suggesting a $50,000 cut further to our general fund allocation for Parks and Recreation, and that how that $50,000 is taken care of, whether it's a reduction in expenditures, whether it's a increase in revenues, be left to the Parks and Recreation Commission. So that being said, I think it's appropriate for our Parks and Recreation Commission to have a budget presentation Thursday, September 1st at 6 p.m. The location's to be determined. It may happen at our Civic Center meeting room, but the training room here on the second floor of the Government Center is being outfitted right now, and it should be completed for cameras, so we can have that meeting videotaped a lot more efficiently here than at our Parks and Recreation, at the Civic Center, excuse me. So we'll be discussing the budget further. You guys will have a full budget presentation. My intent is to provide a few different scenarios that solve that $50,000 decrease in general fund allocation. It'll be a variety of different ways, whether it's an increase in revenues, decrease in expenditures, or a combination thereof. You'll have a variety of different scenarios to choose from. So
What time is that?
that's going to be at 6 p.m. Thursday, September 1st. And Marilyn will send out an email to let commissioners know whether or not that's going to be here at the Government Center in the training room, which is the large room in the back of the building, or whether that's going to be at the Civic Center meeting room.
Bill?
Just a question. So this new information that you got today, does that lower your $736,000 budget request?
If I were to cut it, if this $50,000 was specifically in cutting expenditures, I would have to further
All right, but
reduce by $50,000.
But it could be a revenue, okay.
We could also look at this from a revenue perspective.
Thank you. And the meeting that you've got scheduled for September 1st, I assume that's going to be a full commission meeting?
That'll be a full Parks and Recreation Commission meeting.
Okay,
The only
and
item of business on the agenda will be the budget.
All right. And Al's going to be able to make that, you think?
Yes,
Okay, that's beautiful. Thank you.
So you'll call that as a special?
we'll call that as a special meeting.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, just to comment, just a reminder, we did have a budget committee set up, and it was its task to deal with this directly, and likely that task would have been to come up with recommendation for the full commission on where that $50,000 should be cut from. I just, for the record, I don't know why that process had an end run around it. This will serve the purpose just as well, but it's unfortunate that committee was not able to do its job.
Well, if I understand, this is predominantly an informational meeting.
I'll ask the Parks and Recreation Commission to approve a budget to send on to the County Board of Commissioners at that meeting.
Would we have the option at that meeting, would we have the time after that meeting to have the option of referring that to the Budget Committee?
More than likely, no.
No.
It depends, and it's entirely dependent on the Board of Commissioners' budget timeline.
Can you meet with the Budget Committee prior to September 1?
It's up to the Budget Committee.
Let me just add, an objective of the Budget Committee was so that this could be discussed and solutions offered in a greater time frame. Last year, we had the same problem, that we had like 2 days to approve the budget. So we were hoping to avoid that. So I'm not necessarily calling for a meeting. I'm just stating for the record, it's unfortunate the committee wasn't utilized. And again, we find ourselves in the same position as last year, that we're going to have to make some urgent, immediate decisions.
Christine?
I don't have any idea what the County Board of Commissioners is going to do.
Neither do they. Excuse me.
Come on, Bill.
Actually, they do, Commissioner Doyer. There's a survey in color on your desk.
Yeah.
Christine, you've got the floor.
Thank you. One of the comments at last month's meeting from Commissioner Doyer was about the makeup of this committee. And for the record, the Drain Commissioner in 2002 had a budget of $229,488. And in 2011, a decade later, his budget was $228,566. He is the only department head that had a performance like this, the only one. His budget management and expertise, I think, is invaluable. The fact that I'm on the county board and I have a vote on the actual budget, I think that's important as well. And I would like us to meet. Now, I know Commissioner Doyer at last month's meeting resigned as chairman of the committee. He certainly did not resign as a member of the committee, but he did resign as the chair. I would like us to sit down and at least have a discussion. We may not agree, we may not have a recommendation, but I think it's extremely important that we at least take a look at the numbers. This is a $50,000 cut. Please understand that the county board, the county administrator is already making cuts. He has informed the facilities staff that 11 of them, in all likelihood, will be unemployed as of January 1st. Whether the county board agrees with that, I don't know. But I think that the performance that the Drain Commissioner has demonstrated, the fact that I have a vote on the county board regarding the Parks and Rec budget, I think we at least need to sit down and have a chat.
Jason?
I'd like to discuss a little bit about the process so far. It's frustrating, simply because hearing that the budget committee was put together so this process wasn't a last-minute process. I'd have to point out that to cut the direction to cut $50,000 from the Parks and Recreation General Fund allocation and find a way to take care of that was given to me today at about 12:30. So I find it frustrating that unless I was supposed to call a budget committee meeting between 12:30 this afternoon and this evening, I'm being as proactive as I can based on waiting on information from the Board of Commissioners. So I think that's a bit of an unfair statement because this is the first direction that our commission, or I as a department head, was given regarding decision-making associated with this budget.
Okay, let's look forward, okay? We've got a September 1st special meeting that we've got to deal with this. I personally would like the Budget Committee, if they can, to review it. Who appoints the chairperson of the Budget Committee? Bill's resigned, right, Bill? Is that right?
I offered my resignation,
I asked him not to.
and
Okay, you're on the Budget Committee, too?
No, I asked him,
I talked it over with President Larson. And I'll just share my opinion, not his. It became apparent that that budget committee was somewhat skewed, and it's a little interesting to me that we have two elected officials that are required to be on this commission who seem to want to kind of take over that budget process. There's not much there to take over. There's a lack of leadership from the County Board of Commissioners, and frankly from the administrator too. That puts us all in a position where we're waiting. This news today that just all of a sudden we're going to cut $50,000 out of the parks budget really makes a finance subcommittee a little bit irrelevant. As far as Commissioner McCallia's expertise and his comments for the record, $229,000 Drain Commission budget is, I guess that's admirable. About half of that is going to be his salary, his vehicle, and his benefits. It's not much of a department to compare to Parks and Recreation. Parks and Recreation is a little bit more complicated with the various funds and budgets and things like that. I think the best course of action here is to let our director be a director, let him put together his budget, and present it to us as soon as he can. And apparently, that's going to be September 1st. And then I think as a commission, we ought to react to that.
Kevin.
Mr. Chair, just a couple of corrections of disclaimers. While I respect all the opinions stated, I disagree. Number one, the budget numbers you just quoted, Bill, are totally incorrect. Number two, Jason, the unfair statement. Had we been able to look at the budget July 6th when it was submitted, as I submit my own budget, I could have quickly highlighted some areas where we could have rated them as a lower priority and perhaps cut those if we knew the hammer, the axe was coming down, so to speak. So here we are a month and a half later, and we could have already had those highlighted items, so that would have been beneficial. So I know this has been a tough process, but even if we had a copy of the budget July 6th when it was submitted, it would be beneficial right now to look at where we could make these cuts.
Well, we're going to have a special meeting on September 1st. Does the Budget Committee want to meet prior to that time to review the budget in light of Dennis Aloya's indication that they're going to cut $50,000? I understand Bill doesn't want to. Christine, you do?
I would like to. I have been talking with some of my fellow county board members, not more than I'm allowed to by law. I want to make that absolutely clear. But there are some ideas out there
So your answer is yes, Kevin?
Yes.
Do you want to meet?
Yes, I'd like to fulfill our task and make a recommendation to the full commission at
All
the
right.
September 1st meeting.
I guess to move this thing along, can I get a motion to ask the Budget Committee to meet and give us a recommendation prior to September 1st?
Really quick, is there,
Rebecca?
who's on the actual committee? I know,
I think just Bill, Kevin, and Christine,
but I
right?
thought you resigned,
He resigned as chairman,
okay.
as chair.
as chair. He's still on the committee, right?
I guess.
I reviewed the video. He resigned as chair, not as a member of the committee.
Anybody want to make that motion?
I'll make the
So
motion.
Okay, moved by Max Bauer, supported by McEllier, to request the Budget Committee to meet with Jason to go over this before the budget cuts before September, or the $50,000 issue before September 1st. Jason, you have any comments on that?
I think to pull together, having $50,000 cut from my budget today and having a budget meeting with the committee between now and September 1st, I think it's going to realistically push back the deadline for that budget meeting for approval from the Parks and Recreation Commission.
I don't see why.
Because we still have to figure out where this $50,000, I have to come up with I will be expected, I assume, to come up with some scenarios on how to cut that $50,000 to
Right, and you
present to
started.
this committee.
And you started.
And then to the Parks and Recreation Commission. And
Okay,
that's
well-
going to take some additional time.
I question that. Okay, is there any further discussion on the motion?
Would any other members like to be on the committee, or?
We'd welcome, and I would welcome anyone who'd like to come.
Well,
I would,
let us know when your meeting, when you set it, let us know when it is, okay? And let Jason know if you're going to come, because if we got more than a quorum of this group, then we've got to post it. All right?
Mr. Chair, will you appoint a chair?
Is that what I do?
We need a chair.
Okay, McEllier is appointed chair.
There's a motion on the floor right now, though, too.
Okay, but McEllier is appointed chair. Let the minutes reflect. Okay, you ready to vote on the motion? Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Roll call.
Karstens,
no.
Clark,
Yes.
Doran,
Yes.
Dorier,
No.
Rebecca,
No,
Chris Max Bauer,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
4 yes and 3 no.
So that passes, right?
Right.
Majority of a quorum? Anybody disagree with that? Okay. All right, keep on with your report there, Jason.
The strategic priorities 1D and 2C have been completed. And one of the other things I'd like to discuss, one of the things that came up during initial budget discussions with Dennis and Dean is the revenue versus expenditure discrepancy at both Power Island and Twin Lakes. In both cases, we could reduce, or we could increase revenue at each park to help the overall bottom line for each park. I would suggest, that on our strategic plan, that the strategic plan be reprioritized. It states that our business plan, that we would create a business plan for each individual park, starting with the Civic Center and with Twin Lakes. I'd like to see the prioritization change from Civic Center and Twin Lakes to Power Island and Twin Lakes, considering the discussions that I had with Dennis, to help bolster some revenue at both of those facilities, give us a better bottom line at each facility within our entire Parks and Recreation Fund, as well as fulfilling one of our strategic goals is to create those business plans. I don't know that it's necessary to actually make a change to that strategic plan, but if this commission would like to, I would welcome that. It's something I could easily do by just changing my work plan, which does not require a motion of the Parks and Recreation Commission. But I would suggest making that change at this time.
Bill?
Just a question. This is a business plan, not a master plan.
Correct.
Is a business plan a subcomponent of a master plan?
It could be incorporated into a master plan fairly easily, yes. And that's the overall intent, or that's my overall intent with looking at each of the different goals and different objectives that this commission has identified within their strategic plan. But to start with a business plan in those two parks would make more sense at this point.
The 2011 strategic plan, work plan, a little redundant, states as a goal to have a well-organized park system. And as an objective for that, to reach that goal, it says to establish a business plan for each park, starting with Civic Center and Twin Lakes. What are your thoughts on the changing of the strategic plan objective that I just read?
I think it's fine the way it is.
Okay. Bob?
Well, it seems to me, Jason has asked us to reset those priorities to facilitate dealing with this budget problem. And so I would make a motion to revise that priority list to make the two sites that he stated, I believe it was the Twin Lakes and Maple Bay.
Power Island.
Power Island, rather, the first priorities.
For business plans?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there support for Bob's motion?
I'll support it.
Okay, Bill? Is there a discussion on that?
Could you tell how the expertise North Sky is going, the expertise that North Sky Nonprofit Network is going to provide? And I ask that because I know we've been waiting, they're holding up the DNRE plan, some structure. I'm a little hesitant to get too many committees involved. They tend to slow things down. So again, my question is, what expertise will North Sky Nonprofit provide?
This would not, involving North Sky Nonprofit Network would not create an additional committee. I would agree with you that committees slow things down. In North Sky Nonprofit, they often offer assistance for planning, different types of planning for nonprofits, which we fall into that category, through grants that they have to hire consultants to write business plans or write a variety of different plans. And that's where I would enlist their help.
Okay, we ready for a vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No?
No.
Okay, and it passes, 5-2?
Okay.
Community,
I have nothing new to report on the community collaboration project, with the exception that our large group associated with this community collaboration project, a group of about, I'd guess at this point, probably 40, 45 different people from throughout the community, Parks and Recreation providers, municipal employees from within Grand Traverse County, as well as a variety of nonprofits. We'll be meeting before Labor Day is the goal we've set to further discuss that. After that meeting, I'll have a further update. Maple Bay update. At our last meeting, Commission asked me to look into the farming by the Send Brothers. I talked with the Grand Traverse Conservation District, or Land Conservancy, excuse me. I'll read a couple excerpts from an email that I received from Brian Bordage at the Land Conservancy. The Sends provide much of the equipment and labor necessary to establish some of the requirements of the property, such as restoration of former wetland areas that were once drained for farming and needed to be reestablished as part of the Wetlands Reserve Program easement on the property. What this is referring to is the requirements associated with the USDA Wetland Reserve Program talk about different types of practices to be utilized on the property to ensure that the wetlands maintain and are reestablished as true wetlands versus drained fields in order to increase the number of migratory birds on the property. The Send Brothers also, going back in history a bit, the Send Brothers also disassembled the two main pole building structures that were on the west side of US 31 and rebuilt them at their cattle farm on Bates Road, just north of Hawley Road. This activity saved the county from a cost of nearly $30,000 in demolition and disposal costs, which were also required to be removed according to the site plan and in accordance with all major funders for the property, especially the Natural Resources Trust Fund. Which that shows that there was at one point some type of, I don't know that I would consider that compensation, but they did receive some benefit from that. It was a service to us. They removed the buildings, but they were able to keep that material to rebuild those buildings on their property. And then the county, the other statement from the Land Conservancy is the county has allowed the Send Brothers to farm the property without a lease, since they are the closest operation with the proper equipment for row crop farming at the scale of the size for this property. Land Conservancy has also allowed for the Sends to farm the portion of the farm that they own on an annual basis with an informal agreement as well. So what we're doing is, or what we've done in the past has been congruent with the practice of the Grand Traverse Regional Land Conservancy on this property to have the Send Brothers continue to farm. And that's the history I have at this point related to the Send Brothers. In addition to that, I've been working with the Grand Traverse Regional Land Conservancy. They want to do some additional planning out at Maple Bay that would include our property, that would include their property, to try and determine what the best use for that is. They'd like to see more people utilizing that facility, but utilizing the facility in a manner and in an activity that's congruent with all of the funding sources as well as what's in sync with the natural area out there. The Conservancy is working through some of the hurdles and some of the ideas associated with this planning process and wanted to know if we would be preliminarily interested. I said, this falls in line with what the commission has outlined within its strategic plan, and this is something that we would generally be on board with until we know additional details. The Land Conservancy will be here at our October meeting to give a presentation about this planning process and give the commission more information. At that point, they may also ask for the commission to sign an agreement, a planning agreement, but more details will follow in our September meeting, and then the majority of the information will come in our October meeting. Kim and I, next item on my list is the free pool hours that were discussed last month. This is something that Kim and I are still working on. The budget and some of the other projects we've had have taken priority over that, but it is something that we are looking into with an initial thought of possibly opening the pool up during days that school is out of session. So more information will be forthcoming with that. And then my project list, the DNRE document, as I mentioned, is on hold pending the completion of that needs analysis and getting some good information from that. And our show lease agreements, which has been on this project list for several months. I finally did receive confirmation from Bob Cooney that he will have additional information for us at our September meeting, and I'll be presenting that at that time.
Any questions? Bill?
Yeah, I have a question on the Maple Bay, just a general information question. A portion of that property is owned by the county And a portion is owned by the Conservancy, is that correct?
There is a portion of that area, yes, that's owned by the county, a portion that is owned by the Land Conservancy. Land Conservancy owns about 15 acres, and that's adjacent to the house and the barns on the west side of the property.
Oh, so they got the sunflowers.
They have a portion of the sunflower, a small
They
portion
only
of
have
the
15
sunflower.
acres there.
All right.
Yeah, 15 out of
Surrounding the
400.
house.
Are there any other owners?
No.
Okay, but there were other funding sources
Several,
who had a say in how the property gets developed and used.
correct. And
Right,
each of those
so-
funding sources were for specific reasons
Yeah.
that are linked to their restrictions.
All right, so before my favorite planner shuffles off to Kentucky, I'd like to see a copy of that plan, the master plan. Where would I get a hold of that?
We have them in
In his
our
office.
office, we're happy to give them to you.
All right, are they a voluminous document, or?
No, it's a reasonable size.
Okay.
Is that emailable, Marilyn?
Well, maybe.
We can either burn it to a disk or email it to you.
All right, I'd just like to take a look. I understand it's going to be changing if we get into this other planning process.
Absolutely.
Possibility.
But I'd like to see where we're at now, because it sounds to me like it's a lot like, or maybe more complicated than the Meyer property. With-
It will be much more, it's much more
With expectations
complicated.
by different groups of people as to what we're going to do with this land, and I think we better pay attention to that.
I think one of the straws that broke the camel's back with this was the Bob Carr Agricultural History Project, that the Land Conservancy would like to, they agree, I think they agree in general, and I can't speak for them, that some type of use needs to happen there. But
Okay.
we need to have better, we need to be more clear in what type of activity can go on out there, whether it's appropriate for the facility, whether it's appropriate for the flora and fauna, and whether it fits into the restrictions associated with the funding sources.
Okay, thank you very much.
Russ?
Could I recommend that look into the possibility of getting both the master plan for Maple Bay, Twin Bays, and ultimately the Civic Center as attachments to your website, so that the public can view those documents?
I will do my best.
Okay, I know that's involving a lot of people in the technology, but that information is all digital,
Right.
and it should be able to be accessible.
Bob?
Are the agreements with the funding agencies part of, is that data part of the master plan for Maple Bay?
Yes, the actual master plan itself reflects the constraints of those funding sources in its
But
recommendation.
are the actual agreements and the actual copies of the constraints, are they part of it? Because as I recall, I don't believe they were.
They are not.
And Matt McDonough gave them to me some time back, and I utilized them because I was Vice President for Environment for Grand Traverse Audubon. And then I lent them to the new Vice President or President, and he never returned them. And so, and I was hoping that Matt would and Megan would provide them to you, and they could be copied or something and shared with us so that we could see what they are, because anyway, I think they're important, really important.
Very important, and that also is electronic information that could be provided and be accessible to the general public.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, that would be excellent, particularly when we renew any plan. So.
Any further comments on Jason's report? If not, let's move to old business. The first item of old business is the Meyer property management issue. This commission wanted to find out whether the Grand Traverse Conservation District was interested in managing the Meyer property. And if I understand this letter from Ben Purdy, Parkland Program Coordinator for the Conservation District, Bob Karstens contacted him, and they considered it, and they said that they have some interest, but they want to wait until they see what the master plan for the Meyer property indicates. Is that accurate, Bob, Jason?
That's very accurate, yes.
All right, great. So no action is requested of us at this time? Any discussion on that?
Mr. Purdy is here.
Oh, Mr. Purdy, would you like to comment on this at all?
No, that's it. I think there's great
You-
potential.
I'm sorry for bothering you, but the people at home, I don't think, can hear, and I know we've got thousands of people watching this program.
You'd be surprised.
I think it could be a great partnership, and there's a lot of opportunity there. There's just too many unknowns at this point for our board and the NER board to make any concrete decisions. So once we know what the county's vision for that property is, I think we'll be able to see where we can fit in and help manage that
Good.
property.
Thanks for your interest, and that sounds very logical. Christine?
I just want to say, to let you know that there are many county board members who, once Commissioner Lemkool came up with this idea, have taken a shine to it. So, Jason, when do you think we are going to have, in the grand scheme of things, and I understand you have virtually nothing on your plate right now. Come on, that's supposed to, you can smile a little bit. When do you think that we are going to have a master plan for that piece of property?
Last month, I recommended this commission puts together a master plan associated with that property through the strategic planning process, through the next strategic planning process. The next strategic planning process is essentially up to the Parks and Rec Commission president.
Okay.
So I don't have an idea.
All right.
Well, what are you doing later tonight?
He's still not smiling.
Okay, we'll move on then to...
Thanks, Ben.
Well, Ben's still a step there, Ben, I think. We've got a request from the Conservation District to, under limited circumstances, permit alcohol to be served at specific fundraising events.
That's correct.
Any comments on this request?
Mr. Chair,
Kevin.
Bob, were you present at the discussion of the advisory board? Can you fill in any gaps, more than what's printed in the letter? They appeared to be divided. It appears they were on the fence, they weren't going to go for it, and then they approved it with conditions.
Yeah, in the end, they did approve it with conditions, and I was there, and my question is, at one time, Audubon wanted to use the museum right next to NMC to have an art sale to support some environmental causes, and we wanted to be able to do the same, serve alcohol at that art show, nature art show, and there was a problem because of the insurance that would be required when that is done. And so I don't know, would there be special insurance issues when alcohol is served there? And is that problematic or no? And so
Ben, do you know?
According to our insurance agent, our current coverage is adequate for those types of events where we're not selling anything. And I don't know if you got it, Jason, but I did pass on a copy of that insurance, and the county is listed as additionally insured, and I have a copy of that with me tonight if anybody wants to take a look at that.
Okay. Bill?
Don't we, from time to time, allow events at the Civic Center that have alcohol?
We do.
All right. I would suggest that this type of a thing, as it comes along, just in the course of business, is kind of up to the director, as long as it fits our guidelines.
Rebecca?
I would agree completely. I mean, that's something that we discussed, obviously, for the September event that we're putting off for next year, but I think it's obviously a great idea, and I have no problem with it I think it's up to the director to make that call if it's within our guidelines.
Okay. Christine?
I disagree. No surprise there.
You didn't disagree with the September event?
Oh, yeah, I did not vote for for the alcohol.
Oh, you didn't, yeah, I guess you just didn't mention it when we talked about
Oh,
it.
yeah, I did.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
Absolutely,
One
I did.
person at a time, please, no conversations.
sorry.
First of all, Ben, I have no problem with you serving alcohol at this particular event, and I believe I know, since I attended your last board meeting, what event you're talking about. And hearing the discussion in the board meeting, I think it's fine. Do I think that the Parks Director should have carte blanche when alcohol is or is not served? No. I think that each request needs to come before the Parks Board.
Okay. Kevin, do you have?
That's what I'm trying to find out. What is the precedence and consistency with the county commissioners? I was under the impression that consistently they did not want alcohol on county properties. So I'm here in compromise, and so I'm in agreement, on a per-case basis. We are appointed by the county commissioners, and I want to keep consistent with their policies.
Jason?
The decision whether or not to allow alcoholic beverages in any park is up specifically to the Parks and Recreation Commission. Park Rule number 16, Park Rule 16, I'm trying to find it says the following acts are illegal. Number 16, to possess, consume, or offer for sale alcoholic beverages, except in locations approved for such by the Parks and Recreation Commission. According to our park laws, this is a decision that needs to be made specifically by the Parks and Recreation Commission. I'd like to clarify, I believe, and Ben, please correct me if I'm wrong, that what the Conservation District is asking for is, to some degree, a blanket allowance for events that they specifically are hosting, not events that the public would come in and say, we would like to rent the Nature Center and have alcohol served there. What they're looking for is a blanket agreement from this commission on just a blanket agreement for them for events that they are specifically hosting, not events that the public would have at their facilities.
That's correct. We're just asking that the Parks and Rec Commission deem the Nature Center an allowable spot, as it says in the rules, and with the restrictions that it is a board-authorized event, a Conservation District board-authorized event. Conservation District staff are present at the event, and that the alcohol consumption and possession is limited to the immediate grounds around the Nature Center that the Conservation District leases from the county. So it wouldn't be for the entire Natural Education Reserve.
Bob?
It seems to me, I'm not sure, but are there times when the Conservation District would rent out just the building, like for a wedding?
Yes.
Or something like that? And so would that be one of the cases, a private wedding, where alcohol would be allowed if there was a conservation employee there, or that isn't something that would add to your ability to raise money for your operations through renting for weddings and things like that?
We do have several weddings there every year, or we have since we've opened. Heretofore, we've never allowed alcohol there, and I don't anticipate allowing it in the future. The intent of this is more for district-organized events. I think from the district standpoint, it may be nice to be able to allow alcohol for weddings and things like that, but that's where the concern of the advisory committee came in. They said, boy, if this gets to be a very popular spot and we have weddings booked up every weekend, that's going to take away from the educational component of the Nature Center. That's not what the building is for. So at this time, it would just be for limited Conservation District events and not for rental-type opportunities.
Thank you.
Can I have a motion to grant the request from the Grand Traverse Conservation District for the authority to provide alcoholic beverages at the Nature Center for special events under the conditions listed in Lou Coulter's August 1st letter? Rebecca, moved by Mann-Cass, supported by Karstens. Further discussion? Christine?
Ben, I would prefer, I'm going to be voting against the motion, just simply because I would prefer that individual requests come before the Parks Commission.
Okay, any other discussion?
Mr. Chair, I would just also echo that it seems not compliant with our bylaws that Jason just read. So that's why I'll also not support it at this time.
This property is leased to the Nature Education Reserve.
Correct.
So.
Any further discussion?
Let me just be clear,
Kevin?
because of the blanketness of it, that's why I can't support it. But if this were reworded for this specific event, I could support it, just as the bylaws indicate that each event be brought before the commission.
Well, I support the motion. I think that we've had a great partnership. They're a very responsible organization. They lease the property. It should be their call on these types of things. I'm glad that they checked in with us on this, but I wouldn't want to be here deciding every, couple of weeks whether to let somebody have alcohol. I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, it's 5-2, it passes. Anybody disagree? Okay. The next item is the main event, the Civic Center Master Plan. Mr. Clark.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On August 4th, the public came forth at the Civic Center and reviewed the aspects of the master plan as it's presented to date for the Civic Center Park. And I presented this overall process and schedule of what has happened to date, and including tonight's meeting as a presentation to this commission with the findings from the last public input. The history we've gone through in the past is 45 acres, originally purchased in 1912, 60 years as a fairground. Easling Pool was the first structure that's currently built in the recreation facilities. Howell Arena, the lighting of the walking path, Kids Cove, the basketball courts, and the skate park in 2000. The existing facilities plan you've seen before is still the same. The site analysis plan we've gone through in past meetings, it still remains the same, and we did go through an explanation with the public meeting of what that encompassed and what some of the pros and cons of this particular area are in terms of opportunities and limitations. We did overview the input that was provided in the brainstorming session from the public back in February and how that was prioritized, and then this commission went through each item and either agreed or disagreed, and then that led to a master plan concept that was presented to this commission, and then that moved forward into a little more detail. I blew it up into quarter sections, identifying that the splash pad, the outdoor patio next to Easling Pool, that the area along Front Street, that portion of that fence be removed and either different fencing or landscaping be brought forth as a visual improvement to the front of the property, that a community event sign with an electronic reader board be considered on this property to identify it, and then also bring forth the recommendations on what's happening within the property, that facilities management ultimately find a new home, and that a portion of that building continue to be used for maintaining the 45 acres on this property and not for the entire county system, that a sidewalk linkage from the Civic Center be created going out to Garfield, which requires cooperation with TCAPS in the city itself because it's a public street, that we consider Oak Park school property as a possible expansion to the park should that property become available. In the northeast corner, that we facilitate a new pathway from the ball field north-south corridor going between ball fields 4 and 5. Also link a pathway over to the Indian Marker trail tree, and that the outdoor events area continue to be a function of the property, that the consideration of lengthening the pathway within, the walkway within the Civic Center be created in the northeast corner to create exactly 1 mile length. It's short by about 200 feet, I believe. and that there also be an extended pathway from the skate park to the trail system going to the east. In the southwest corner, that the fencing that exists along the park property continue to remain at the 6-foot height on the west property line, that on the south property line, the fence be lowered to 3 feet to facilitate a better visual aspect and still facilitate some safety aspects along the trail, that the parking area next to the picnic pavilion be created as a definition for controlling access by the utilization of the wood fencing that's been developed in the area already, and some additional landscaping to control access and increase safety along that main roadway within the Civic Center. And in the southeast corner, that we create another new pedestrian corridor access that also perhaps be a linkage to the TART Trail system down through the city cemetery property to Parsons Road to the TART Trail, linking the Civic Center up to the college, that the play area of Kids Cove ultimately be redeveloped because those facilities as they exist today no longer meet safety requirements for play equipment, and that additional play equipment be considered in the future to the north of Kids Cove for different age groups within the oak tree canopy that exists there. Consideration of an additional picnic shelter in that area because of the activity long-term be considered, and that pickleball courts could be facilitated to the west of the existing basketball courts. There's room for 4 pickleball courts in that location. And then the multi-purpose sports field, a lot of discussion on that during the public process, that be enhanced to facilitate a number of different activities from lacrosse, rugby, football, flag football, etc., and soccer, based on the aspect of the improvements that have already been done to the baseball field, number 1, and that additional improvements in the future be considered for lighting this area. We also made recommendations on how the Easling Pool could be expanded in 2 directions, and in the public input process, we were asked to also consider that these areas be dual use, that perhaps they be 2-story, and that indoor pickleball courts could be on the 2nd floor above any pool expansion. That's a possibility. As square footage, it just has to be designed and built structurally to accommodate that additional use on another level. This concept also reflects expanding the parking lot, realigning the walkway, and facilitating a portion of the existing building for maintenance purposes of this park. We also had provided a recommendation on how Oak Park School property could become a new community recreation center on a fairly large scale. This would involve indoor walking trail, additional indoor pools, and senior center and other activities for daycare within this facility. This facility cannot accommodate all the parking that's required for any structure accommodating up to this size. What we see in red is approximately 11,000 square feet of structure. This would require a new linkage to the existing parking lot at the Civic Center, a new bridge on the trail system, and utilizing the existing parking lot for this activity, for this center. We also provided a recommendation on the detail of how the sidewalk linkage could work along the entry coming into the Civic Center on Civic Center Drive, that the existing playground structure or playground fence north of Oak Park School would have to be relocated approximately 10 feet to the south, that a sidewalk could be located through there and then accommodate a drop-off zone, asphalt pull-off area, because of the current flow of activity from the school. There's a pick-up and drop-off routine that's taking place with the one-way road system, and it does create a bottleneck on the entry into the Civic Center during certain times of the day, certain days of the week. This would accommodate that activity to continue and still facilitate good, safe flow into the Civic Center from Garfield. Those are basically the overall recommendations that have come forth from the public input. As I mentioned, we received a recommendation of considering a 2nd floor on any pool expansion for multiple uses. We also discussed extensively about the fencing of either removing it or lowering it or leaving it the same, and there was a pretty even debate on that aspect. Then there was also a discussion on how Fair Street is used as a drop-off area for a lot of skate park users, and there really is no facilitating area there for that to occur. Parents are picking up or dropping off their youngsters for the skate park in a travel lane of a two-lane roadway. And so I'm throwing out as a consideration to the Parks and Recreation Commission, if you'd like to have me add into the master plan, the consideration of a drop-off zone or lane off from Fair Street to facilitate. It would have to be one way going south on that, on the west edge of the travelway, and would involve realigning a portion of the walking trail, realigning the fence, portion of the fence, creating an asphalt and curb inset into the park property for cars to pick up and drop off, and it would have to be identified as a no parking zone. This could be added to the master plan. The details of this would have to be evaluated with the city in terms of their road system and their safety requirements as to whether that could be accommodated or not accommodated. But it was a thought process that the users of the skate park are really using Fair Street as the access versus the main parking lot. Yes, ma'am.
Russ, as you suggest this drop-off, where is that in relation to the tree? And you know, I never can remember what to call it, but you know the tree I'm talking about.
Yes, the tree is right here.
Okay,
You see the arrow?
yes,
And the drop-off area that I'm recommending is right here.
okay, thank you.
And it would be between the skate park and
All right,
this ball field.
all right,
okay?
okay,
Which,
thank you.
which would, whoops, I hit the wrong button. Which would mean that it would be increased the width here about 8 to 10 feet for a stretch along here and then bring it back out. We'd have to realign the walking trail, realign the fence to accommodate that, create that as an entry point for the park. But it's a one-way. It cannot accommodate people going north. It would be going against the flow of traffic. And you cannot accommodate parking. So it becomes very restrictive.
Okay, the other question I have for you is, the county board set aside, I think it was $15,000 to begin, which, you know, when you're talking about moving dirt,
That's right.
it's not a lot, but it's something. And it's thanks to your generosity. Where would you recommend we begin?
I really think that dealing with the fence is one of the first things to do, because it really, that's a visual impact without spending a lot of money. And, you know, perhaps a portion of that effort could be done in-house with the facilities team based on their schedules. I don't know that. But I think that visual change would show quickly. You know, your costly items in this plan are, you know, extending walkways, laying asphalt, putting up a sign. That's going to be fairly costly venture. You know, building expansion is very, very costly. The pickleball court, you know, there's a group out there that's very interested in having facilities. Perhaps there's a joint venture opportunity there between a special interest group in the county to use some of the funds towards that. You know, all those are great possibilities to move forward with this plan.
Okay. But I'm hearing the fence would be your first pick.
That's my recommendation, but in the end, it's going to be your decision, okay? One of the other points I'd like to bring forth that was discussed at the public meeting, and I'm sure Bob or Bill would correct me on this before I'm done, was the actual location of the sign. Where I have shown it on the plan is right here, basically where it was historically, right in the middle of property. It was recommended that we consider it down near the corner where traffic is stopped.
Yeah, that's right.
And that has some merit because we're putting a sign up on a piece of property with no entry on that road. How do you get in, once you've identified what it is, how do you get there? So if that sign could also have an arrow that says entry this way and bring people down Fair Street to Titus Street to the main entry, having the sign near the intersection does start to make some sense. So with your permission, I'm going to suggest that we alter the plan to locate the sign near that corner, because I think it has some merit. But I wanted to bring it forth to this commission before I... Does
anyone object to that, or does anyone object to the drop-off punch out on Fair Street.
I have one quick question on that drop-off zone. Instead of, you mentioned moving the walkway and the fence. I mean, if I remember correctly, that fence between the original fence that's there and the road, there is a bit of land there.
There is a bit.
So-
I'm not sure it's enough, though.
Right, but if we were to take the fence down and you literally just had a pull-off zone where you didn't have an island and all the extra cost of moving all of that, you could just have a small little, kind of like what you see at the top of Center Road overlooking
Sure.
Power Island, just a thought to bring costs down.
Okay, Russ, I think you got the consensus to make those changes.
Okay,
Are there any other changes that you're,
those are my recommendations.
right, Jason?
What's coming forth, as you're well aware, I'm leaving shortly, and I will prepare a written narrative and email it back for Jason to distribute to you of the overall master plan and the recommendations. So each of these documents will have a written narrative to go with it. I will identify the history of the property, the recommendations, why those recommendations have come forth, and then I will put together a budgetary aspect of the main physical features for your
great.
consideration.
Terrific. And I thank you again for this, and this question is not to try to put any time commitments on you, but do you have an idea of what meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission this will be on for final vote? September, October, November?
Probably at the earliest October,
Okay.
and may go back into November, but I'll try and get it to you by October.
Okay, great. Thanks. Jason?
Russ, I'm sorry to do this to you right now. Since you and I talked, 12 days ago about that cutout for pickups and drop-offs for the skate park, I've been paying attention to where a lot of our skaters come in, and we've seen, in talking to our rangers, we've seen a decrease in the number of people being dropped off.
Oh, really? Okay.
At that park, or at that portion of the park. If we have families that come in, typically they're actually, believe it or not, parking in the Civic Center and then walking, skateboarding, or biking as a group back to the skate park. And that's what we're seeing for our families. The teenagers in the adolescents, if you will, are typically skating in from that portion of the park or are walking in from NMC, coming in from the corner. So
Okay.
I think that at one point, early in the life cycle of the skate park, I think we did see a lot of people dropping off and picking up at that location. But I don't know, because based on our conversation, I've been more vigilant in paying attention with where people are coming in from. And I'm seeing a big increase, and our park rangers are actually seeing a decrease in people picking up and dropping off there. So that's something to keep in mind.
Sure.
I don't know if it's kind of tough to do it. I don't know that we can do a traffic count for people picking up and dropping off, but I guess keep that in mind as you move forward with the plan.
I
Bill?
guess I would like to recommend then that I just show it as an inset, a blow-up of that area as a possibility for consideration. Should the demand be there and the safety constraints can be met, whatever they may be, from the standpoint of the city streets, that it could be considered. So it's an option of the master plan, and you don't necessarily have to implement it.
Yeah, the format of this is, as far as I'm concerned, it's all up to you. If you change your mind and think the sign should be in the middle or whatever, I mean, that's your call. Bill?
I just want to, I've been thinking about that offset too, that drop-off zone. There's a Beta bus stop further to the south along Fair Street. Maybe we could make a bus stop and a drop-off zone all in
Oh,
one.
absolutely, yes,
And kind of make that a pedestrian entrance to the park.
absolutely. That's how I would envision it.
All right, I attended your meeting, and I just want to point out to the other commissioners who weren't there, Bob was there. We had a crowd of, I don't know, 30 people? You took roll. There was 20.
Yeah, about 30.
All right. And a lot of pickleballers, lots of them. They're very vocal, they really want, they love their sport, and they really want more and more places to do it. And I think we have a real opportunity here to fill a need. The other half of the crowd were pool users, equally vocal, equally emotional and supportive, and they want to make sure we all understand that the pool's very important to them. It was a really good meeting.
Thank you. Kevin?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Russ, again, so grateful for this priceless pro bono effort you have given us consistently. Now you blew me away. I was going to ask you about numbers. How do we implement, the reality of budget numbers? Now I hear you say you're going to provide budget numbers on each one of these elements?
Yes, we'll create a list of the items and put a budget number to it. And, it's plus or minus, but it's the budget.
Well, I trust your judgment, but that's great, because that was my concern from the get-go with this budget crisis. Is this going to be on the shelf? So thank you, but priceless.
Any other comments? Have a great next stage of your career in Kentucky.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, we will move on then to the next agenda item, which is deer control at Power Island.
It's kind of
Jason.
this is kind of a challenging topic to bring up to the commission again, because of frankly, the lack of information that I have about this. Last year, as you know, we worked with a full-time biologist that the DNR had, that gave us some idea, and we asked him to come out. He asked us in the fall of 2009, to build some exclosures on the property, and for him to get a count in the spring of 2010 about the number of deer that he would anticipate being on the island. This is anticipation that there were 10 to 20 deer. So in November, I brought this to the commission and asked to harvest 3 deer from the island based on that DNR biologist's recommendation. We had 3 sheriff's deputies go out there in late November, and they actually saw approximately 50 deer on the island. I asked our park ranger out there, and myself have been working with the new DNR biologist, who is a half-time person covering a larger area due to state budget cuts, their opinion again on how to best control this population on the island. It's been tough to get answers out of this one biologist, other than he suggesting that we open the island up to bow hunting on October 1st by use of special permit. And he to some degree left how to go about the special permits. He kind of put it in the Parks and Recreation, put it in our lap with how to distribute these permits, so we didn't have too many people on the island. I've followed up with a variety of questions, and you do have at least one email, or a series of emails, excuse me, between myself and Stephen, or myself, Stephen, and Fred Tank, the park ranger, and I've yet to hear back from the DNR. The challenge with this is that the DNR is suggesting bow hunting, which begins October 1st, which means this plan would have to be finalized and approved by the Parks and Recreation Commission in our September meeting. So I don't want to say that I'm at a loss, because if this commission's comfortable with it, if this commission's comfortable, I'd like to ultimately like to have a motion that allows me to move forward with facilitating this deer harvest on the island, pending approval of a plan by the Department of Natural Resources. This is a decision that's fully within the power of the Parks and Recreation Commission, but I also realize in asking that I don't have all of the answers. It would be my hope that all of the answers would come with an approved DNR plan, that I could either ask for a motion now to approve that, pending that DNR plan, or we discuss it in our September meeting. But it's an awfully short timeline if we're going to put a lottery out or do some type of selective random picking for who would be able to hunt the island.
Mr. Madcast.
That sounds kind of funny, sorry. I would love to see a more detailed report on, obviously they got it wrong last year on the numbers, but really to see, this is from Fred Tank, but he states initially they appear to be healthy and well-fed. I was just out there. I think the main concern out there are the raccoons. I don't think it's the deer. I just camped there on the 16th. They terrorized the site from the beginning 6 p.m. until we actually moved the food out onto our powerboat, and they swam out onto the powerboat and ate the food.
How nice.
So are there any, obviously, what about making it a more sustainable, and, introducing fox or something like that? Because
Lions.
the raccoon population is, I feel like the deer population is, if they're he's saying they appear to be healthy and well-fed, why are we, 50 deer, if you look at, how many acres are
Right,
out
well, I think I can
in
answer that.
the whole many plant species have disappeared, they're eating everything. I saw no evidence of deer feeding at all on where we were.
Hopefully I can answer all of those questions. The number of deer that were counted on the island, that number was counted by the 3 sheriff's deputies that were out on the island last November. We spent
How do you do that?
we spent 9 hours on the island, and we had 3 deputies that were walking the entire island, and each of them corroborated that they counted at least 50 deer.
And did they see sightings of vegetation and all that being?
No, but we've seen that historically.
Okay.
In 1976, the island all the deer on the island were eradicated. There wasn't a single deer on the island after 1976, because they had eaten themselves off of the island, and at that point were so small because they didn't have the food, that they were small, they were malnourished, and it was an unhealthy deer population. At that point, and I don't know if at that point, I guess it was probably the county board of supervisors that approved that hunt happen, and all of the deer were either pushed off the island or killed on the island, hunted on the island. Since 1976, that deer population has come back, and it's come back to a point where right now it's sustainable. But as this small population of deer, as these 50 deer continue to populate or continue to reproduce, they will eventually eat themselves again out of vegetation. That's what Fred's concerned about now. So I'm confident. I'm much more confident at this point in that 50 deer count versus the 10 to 20 that we heard last year. So that's the reason, is to try and get this population under control. As far as the raccoons go, the reason I'm bringing this to you is because we have to follow proper protocol for elimination of deer. We don't have to follow DNR, to my knowledge, and I can do some research, but there isn't a season for raccoons. Raccoons are a pest, and I'll be honest with you, you're the second person I've heard that from just within the past 2 weeks. Fred has never mentioned raccoons being a nuisance, but you're the second person that's mentioned it to me, and I believe that to be the case, and there are some other methods that we may be able to use to eliminate or
introduce
cut
fox.
down on the number of raccoons on the island. So that is a very, very valid concern, but because we do have the regulations associated with hunting, that's why I'm bringing deer control to the commission versus raccoon control.
Mr. Purdy would like to make a comment. Is that okay with everybody?
Of course.
I just wanted to offer that in addition to the deer eventually starving themselves out, what will happen before then is that they will reduce the regeneration of tree species on the island. And so that's not something that would be real readily apparent. It would just manifest itself in reduced understory. What that leads to over time is an overaged forest condition. You have too many old trees, not enough young ones coming up because they keep getting eaten down by the deer, and that makes the forest susceptible to catastrophic loss from storms or disease and things like that. So it's just another good reason to keep the populations in check, even if you don't want to reduce them right now, but just to keep them stable over time. I think that would be a good idea.
Well, I think that would be a very attractive place to bow hunt, and my initial thought on that was this should be a part of the business plan for Power Island. The right to hunt on that island may be a saleable commodity if the DNR allows us to do that. I mean, they'd have to get a bow permit, but it's a county property, so we could limit, I suspect, the number of hunters that go out there, and And I think it would be an attractive and perhaps a saleable opportunity where we could raise some money. Can you get this addressed within the context of the Power Island business plan?
I don't know if I could do that in a timely enough manner for October 1st, and that's the key. We need to do something much higher, or larger scale now.
Bow season runs from October 1st to firearm season, and then it starts up again after firearm season. If bow hunters were allowed to go on the island October 15th, it would be within bow season. I don't think that we should rush the decision, because there's probably a lot of stuff that we're not really thinking about right now that has got to be considered. And I wouldn't, I'd be nice to get it done because of the budget concerns, but if it doesn't get done this year, there's always next year. Bill?
I just have a question. Was there rationale that's not apparent to me as to why bow season but not firearm season?
That's one of the things that I've asked for clarification on from the DNR, but I have not heard back from them.
I agree with Commissioner Doran. I think this is a real opportunity here. Maybe we have some sort of a lottery. We sell some tickets. We maybe even, I don't know, if you were bringing in enough money, then maybe you could spend a little money and offer transportation out to the island on a specific day and take 10 people.
We could offer a discount if they take a raccoon along with the deer.
One deer and all the raccoon you can take.
There you go.
Seriously.
Each ticket's worth that.
Do you have direction here, Jason, or do you
I'd like,
need more?
if the commission's comfortable with it, I'd like a motion to move forward in allowing deer hunting, bow hunting, pending an approved plan by the Department of Natural Resources.
So moved.
Okay, do you want to just say hunting instead
Yeah,
of?
take the bow hunting out?
Yep, that's
Is that
great.
okay, Bob?
Yeah.
Is there support?
I support that.
Dwyer supports. Any further discussion, Kevin?
Last time when it was done was a safety factor addressed in the DNR plan. I wonder if that's why they're switching to bow hunting. I've been out there hiking a lot in the afternoon. I'm not seeing the deer. I haven't been out there before dawn and after dusk, but I wonder if there's a safety factor here for our citizens that are on the island. I'm kind of waiting for further information.
This has been a different process than we've followed in the past. They asked us to. They treated our harvest last year similar to the way a farmer would, in drawing a special permit so that I actually had to draw in my name, which was a bit worrisome to me for me to take on the liability of 3 hunting permits or hunting licenses in my name, which is part of the reason that I suggested last year that we utilized specifically sheriff's deputies, because they should have the highest standard of training. So there wasn't necessarily a plan that was put in place associated with safety last year. This process that they're asking us to go through this year is entirely different, and safety would certainly be a portion of that plan through the Department of Natural Resources.
That's what I'd kind of like to see, the full details of the plan. So, Mr. Chair, my understanding, we've got a motion contingent upon the plan? Is that how it's worded?
We have a motion to allow Jason to go forward with the allowing of hunting on Power Island, hunting of deer on Power Island. There's no contingencies, it's just to proceed.
But-
How many deer are we talking about?
That's something to be identified in that
Okay,
plan.
so that we'll be voting on this again or no? You'll just go with.
I don't
I
think
think
we will.
He's
I
going
think
to,
it
my
will-
understanding was that I made a motion to support what he suggested was his plan, and I thought it included the safety elements and all these other things.
What I would like to see is the commission allow hunting at Power Island.
And that's all?
And then I would follow, and if you guys want to make that part of your motion, great, that it would follow a plan approved by the Michigan Department of Natural Resources for the safe harvest, or for the harvest of deer on the island.
I kind of understood that what you just read was part of the motion.
Right, that I think kind of goes without saying. He's going to have to satisfy the DNRE and the safety requirements. I suggest we let the director run with this. Okay? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Carries 6-1. Okay, let's move on to the safety audit.
Last item I have for you this evening is the safety audit. I gave you guys at our last meeting, I gave you a copy of the safety audit as performed by Terry Van Doren, and there were some I wouldn't say there was anything in there that was surprising to me. And everything is fairly manageable, possibly with the exception of the Civic Center. There was a recommendation to replace the bleachers at the Civic Center, which is a very costly item. I've talked with Danny Brown on this, and he's given me a ballpark figure of about $200,000 associated with that. It has been identified as a hazard because it's a 10-foot rise, or excuse me, 10-inch rise on the steps, which is not standard. I'm working with MMRMA to pursue a risk avoidance program grant, which is a grant program through MMRMA, our Risk Management Association, to help replace and to avoid risk throughout our park system. So one of the facets of that RAP grant that I'll be preparing is bleachers for the Civic Center. The Meyer House, the buildings were secured at the Meyer House, as I mentioned, I think in our June meeting. No, it must have been our July meeting. And the only suggestion that Terry had for that was that there be additional security lighting, that an alarm be put on the buildings, and possibly video surveillance at that property. He said our biggest risk there would be risk for loss versus risk for any type of injury or accident on that property. One of the things he also identified is that how we handle risk management at that property will be determined by the activities that the Parks and Recreation Commission decides will be happening at that property when we go through the strategic planning process. Maple Bay Farmhouse and Barn, he made similar recommendations for Maple Bay as he did for the Meyer property. He made a variety of recommendations at the Keystone Soccer Complex. I've already met with Jennifer Jorgensen, and several of those items have been addressed, including the county's obviously named as an additional insured, which we've discussed in the past. Grand Traverse County was added to their hold harmless clause in their waivers. There's been some ongoing back and forth discussion with T-Bays and with MMRMA in regards to sanctioning out-of-state teams, because they do have a variety of tournaments from out-of-state with out-of-state teams included. They've actually ordered some J-hook stakes to stake down their goals, and I've asked them to actually order an additional 2 extra sets for us. They're going to be buying several sets, and I've asked them to add to us hopefully for some quantity discount. But they didn't have a problem with making any of these recommendations or following through with these recommendations. I'm excited to say the improvements or the remedy, I guess the issues out at Beitner Park were completed by the Conservation District on August 5th. So Ben, thank you for your help with that. Twin Lakes, all the swimming area suggestions were completed. Stakes and warning stickers, as I mentioned, will be added to the soccer goals as soon as we have those in. The Vasa Trail Storage Building, I received a copy of the personal property coverage on August 8th from TART. And the Park by the River, there's some ongoing discussion with Terry from MMRMA associated with how to best secure the platform he mentioned. That's actually a canoe launch. It's not specifically a fishing platform. Obviously, fishing can happen from it, but the point of that platform is specifically for canoe and kayak, canoe and kayak launches. The suggested waterfront signage has been added at all of our parks with water. And one of the other comments that he made was about the readability, I suppose, I guess you could say, about the park rules sign at Maple Bay. And that's something that I'm working with Bob Cooney on. He suggested that we put the entire ordinance on the sign, which we did. But in order to accommodate that on one piece of aluminum, we had to make the printing very small. So that's a concern that Terry Van Doren had, and that's something I will continue to work on. So any questions related to the safety audit?
How often do you do it?
This is the first one we've done, I believe, I think it's the first one that's happened in our park system.
Well, it should be an annual event. It's very valuable. All of these are good recommendations, but, you know, you can't read this without thinking that two young men died at Twin Lakes, and that needs further investigation. Was there any commonality in those two tragedies? Is there anything else? I mean, there are the suggestion to put up warning, unsupervised swimming, swim at your own risk. I mean, is that really an effective thing to do? Is there anything further that we could do to try to prevent that?
I guess a couple things in relation to that. Both of those losses were tragic. In this case, Terry had visited the property on July 13th, and the drowning happened July 20th.
Mm-hmm.
So the county, we did everything in our ability to make that park safe based on the recommendations of the Michigan, of MMRMA. He did suggest putting up a life-saving station, and I'm working with Terry and working with our facility staff to get one of those put up at that park.
Has he, that's good, but has he specifically analyzed the police reports or accident reports from those incidents to see if there was anything in relation to the facilities that could be changed?
I don't know whether,
I
don't know that Terry specifically did. MMRMA have received copies of both of the reports, both within days of us.
I would ask that you contact him and see if he could provide that service to us.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I wanted to mention that after the most recent tragic drowning out at Twin Lakes, Commissioner Leapsight went out there, and he called me shortly after his visit, and he said, Chris, he said, there are no buoys out here. And he said there always historically have been buoys that mark the drop-off areas. So I went out and I took a look. And Greg, my husband, went in the water, and there is an extremely steep cliff. I mean, it's like not even 15 feet off the shore. It just drops off. You know, my husband's over 6 feet, you know, and his fingers are barely hanging out of the water. And I talked with some people who were using the beach, and I said, you know, what do you envision that we could do to make this safer? And they said, mark the drop-off area. They said, that way it gives us a fighting chance. We can tell our children, you stay inside those buoys. Mm-hmm. So I met with Chairman Inman, and I had breakfast with him, and I told him about Commissioner Leapsight's visit, and I told him about my concerns as well, and what I had talked with residents about. And Chairman Inman brought it up to the county administrator. And then I subsequently met with the county administrator, and he told me that the insurance gentleman went out there, MMRMA, when we apparently had a camp already in progress. And when we have a camp already in progress, the buoys are there. So he didn't know the buoys were not normally there. The county administrator has since said that the buoys are going to be there all the time. And I have gone out there as recently as today, and the buoys are in the water marking the drop-off.
Good.
My only concern is, and I'm glad you brought this up, Jason, when the buoys are marking this, as you walk to the beach on the right-hand side, and unless the public goes out and uses Twin Lakes, they're not going to understand what I'm saying, but I know you will, Jason. On the right-hand side, the buoys are in the water and they mark where the drop-off is. On the left, where the steep cliff is, when you walk out like 10 or 15 feet offshore, and I mean, it drops. There's just no warning. You're just underwater. Could we somehow provide a topographical map, post it? Now, there is a sign there that says risk, you know, swimming at your own risk, warning, etc. But if we could point out that that's a dangerous area, and that one spot is extremely dangerous. I sat there and watched a 3-year-old child, you know, headed out. And I looked at the parents and I said, you know, are you aware there's a drop-off there? Oh, yeah, we're here every weekend. Well, they're there, they live around the corner, they're there every weekend, but people who visit are not aware of that. Is there some way we can market, just give people a heads up?
We can check into some signage out there. More than likely to be a hazard sign saying sharp drop off, something to that effect. We can certainly do that. One of the things that I'd like to clarify is Terry, when he was out, I made it very clear to him that those buoys were not always in. And Dennis knows this, I'm waiting on some clarification on his recommendation associated with the buoys in relation to a dock that was formerly out there and how that relates to the signage. So once I have clarification from him, I'll pass that along to Dennis and make the changes as suggested by MMRMA.
Thank you.
Good. Bill?
Yeah, just a question, this latest tragedy, did that swimmer enter the water at that beach, or did he enter the water somewhere else and swim to that beach?
This one, from my knowledge of the incident, he entered from the beach,
Okay.
from the normal posted beach.
All right. You know, they had a drowning right at the open space
Yeah.
just yesterday.
There were signs
Yep.
there too.
Yeah. And it's, I'm a former lifeguard and water safety instructor, and you can't just say, this stuff just happens, because that's not an adequate response. But you have to consider these measures carefully as to what they're going to actually accomplish and how to get the message across. A life-saving station is that a rope and a buoy?
Rope and a
And a
pull.
ring?
Rope and a throw buoy.
Okay. That's a good idea.
Okay. All right. Well, Elaine Kozlowski's been waiting patiently for a second public comment, so if it's okay with everybody, we'll move on to that item.
I'll be quick. Just a couple comments on the Meyer property. I really want to commend Jason Jones for his initiative on getting things started out there. We realized when this all had come up in May that you have a master plan for all of your park properties, and you had kind of an arrangement as to which ones were going to be, done. And I said, well, it's not that we're in a hurry, but why this came up was because in the May meeting, the memorandum from your attorney, Mr. Cooney, with the request of Commissioner Max Bauer about the property, the personal property that was on the farm. And it should be moved and have an auction, et cetera, like that. It was just by chance that I turned on 99. I was surfing that evening and saw your meeting and started listening to the conversation. And so I contacted the heirs, Lou Meyer and Bob Meyer, and asked them if they had documentation in regards to the personal property that their parents, Joe and Bessie, had donated to the people of the county, along with the real estate property. And he went through his dad's papers and he did find it. And then, of course, that had been passed on to the director, to the commission, and also to Mr. Cooney. So fortunately, the misinformation had been caught in time. As Mr. Doran had mentioned at last meeting, he said, we thought it was abandoned property, but clearly it was in trust, for the county. And Mr. Dorier mentioned also that we were going down the wrong route. So now we're on the right route, and Jason has already taken care of some of the immediate needs that were out there, safety issues that you just talked about. And Russell Clark had mentioned about the granary with the tree limbs on and getting that fixed and the one broken window up there. But I just want to say again that Joe and Bessie were just the best people, and it's unfortunate that not everyone had met their acquaintances. But Joe was a farmer, yes, but he loved that property and he thought it was the best place on the earth. And he also was so much into recreation. He was a frequent user of your Easling pool. He and Bessie would go there for health reasons, you know, in their late years and that. And Tim Schreiner had said in his eulogy that the people were, when their health gave out and they weren't able to attend as often as they had, that they missed him. And they'd say, Tim, do you have any good Joe stories to tell us? And I think this legacy, you know, it's going to take time, but it will be there for the citizens and especially for the youth. And the soccer fields, too, were all part of this thing. I did give Jason some information that I had saved out of the Record Eagle in 2006 on the Doherty House out on the peninsula and the inventory that they had done out there. And it was a gentleman, Paul Burns, who had devised this tagging system. And I called him, just took a chance and called him, wonderful gentleman. And he said, you tag the items, and then you have 3 paper copies, and then you also put it on a computer, a system. And I said, well, do you have like a patent on this system? He said, oh, no. He said, I just did it. It was something I was interested in. He's a graduate of Duquesne University in Pittsburgh and is retired in the area. He does have some health issues right now, but he said he would be more than glad to share the system and, you know, when it comes time to be doing that. And I would also suggest that Lou Meyer, who lives in Berwyn, Pennsylvania, near Philadelphia, and he's a retired United Airlines pilot, and his brother Bob, that lives up in Anchorage, Alaska, and he is a retired hydrologist. So I was saying earlier that here these 2 boys grew up on this farm and went off into these careers, but they didn't want to continue with farming. So, but I guess which is
Well, thanks, Elaine. Thanks for all the information that you've provided us.
So the thing about Lou and Bob is to make use of their knowledge too, and they're willing to come
I think
back.
Jason has Lou's contact information
Okay.
for sure. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? If not, notices and commissioner comments. I think we're going to have a pared down version of the minutes pursuant to Kevin's suggestion. He's a secretary, and I wholeheartedly support that. I think that too much in the minutes is dangerous.
Thank you.
And by way of comments and dialogue, except for we're going to retain a short summary of public comments at the various meetings. I also would like to ask that the commissioners be given updated bylaws or the portion of the bylaws that we changed last time. I think now we've changed slightly the strategic plan, so if we could get a new strategic plan, revised 816, and and I looked at my committee list, and we don't have the finance committee on my committee list, so maybe I don't have a current one, but if we could get a current copy of the committee list, that would be appreciated. Thanks. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
Move to
I think we get a unanimous vote
to
here.
adjourn.
Aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Any dates between now?
So long, Russ.
Can adjourn.
We're volunteers
Yeah,
for
I'm
that.
leaving Thursday.